Usually we don't do videos this long, but I'm going to start with the cheapest lens. This is a comparison of 7 different 24mm lenses. Now, that's 24mm in full frame on the Panasonic S1, if it's a zoom or not, zoom or prime. So I'm just using what I have here, 7 fully wide open for each lens, and starting with the 17-35 here. And with the 17-35, if you notice, I'm racking focus here, and you can see there's some internal element that is spinning and causing the flare to actually spin too. The interesting thing about this lens, it has a compact design for a full frame zoom. It has flare like an old lens, which it is a screw drive Nikon lens. It's not unappealing. It's not for the center of the image. It's fairly sharp. You can see some, the edges aren't great. There's some CA on the edges, but overall, for a lens that you could probably get for less than, I don't know, less than $200, not bad. Next up is what I consider an underrated gem. I have 2 of these, one in Nikon and one in Canon mount. This is the Canon mount one. It has VC too. So not only do you get stabilization on lenses on bodies without IBIS, usually you have problems with that with IBIS, but this is a very nice clean lens that usually has a lot of flaring with that huge front element. And here you can see, compared to the last lens, the flaring is better. And the contrast is really nice. And I think when we get into the full 3x3 comparisons, you'll see how nice the contrast here actually looks. Overall, the bokeh and edges are nice. There's not a whole lot of fall off, using that white wall as a background. Just an overall pleasant image. And that's one thing about this lens that's nice. I think the Tamron 28-75 Red rehoused that once for their own zoom, which would have been the same generation of lenses. These are nice. On to the Rokinon 24mm Cine DS. You can tell there's a color shift here. It's a much warmer image, and racking back and forth. Focus nice. I'm not quite sure it's T15, but it's going to be fairly close. It could be T15. Just the Sigma 1.4 coming up is close in aperture as well. Wide open, if I were to give one word about this lens, it would be creamy. I probably missed focus here a little bit. I hit focus at the beginning. In racking back, I didn't hit it quite dead on, but part of the face is in focus. But if you're looking at the chart, that's not the lens, that's me, but there is, it's not the sharpest wide open. It does get tack sharp when it's closed down, but it gives a nice image. So another outlier here is using the Sigma 18-35 Art 1.8 wide open in full frame mode. So on the S1, this is kind of a pain, but you do see a little bit of an A on the sides at 24mm, but still, flare is well controlled. It's tack sharp wide open. It's a very, very nice lens, obviously. That's why everyone uses them, but even in full frame mode, certainly usable here. I think the last video I showed some vignette correction. But flare well controlled. I mean, there's a reason why this is probably the #1 lens on the GH5 and probably the GH6 coming up over the native Panasonic lenses, is just because it's an awesome do-all lenses, and why they're rehoused as Cine lenses too. So next up is the full frame version. So this is the Sigma 24-105 Art at f4. So you can see, it's corrected now for full frame. It's not as fast, but the images, the colors are very similar. The coating is very similar. The geometry is different now being on full frame. Probably the image circle could cover a little bit larger. The handling of this lens is also very nice, like the 18-35. It's an excellent all-around lens. Even looking in the corners, no CA, wide open. for something that's you can really shoot at all apertures from wide open to wherever you want to go to, it looks great. So there is a little bit of breathing though. So if you saw that as I'm moving the focus, there is a little bit of breathing on some of the focal lengths on this lens, which is sort of similar with how the Sigma 50 to 100 handles as well, which isn't included in this test. But if you guys like this, then I might do a big comparison at different focal lengths. Next up, we see the color shift again, and this is probably my favorite of the tests. This is the Sigma 24mm 1.4 Art. Again, this is fully wide open. Love the color rendering here. It is different than both of the zooms. The mechanics are at least as good as the Rokinon, if not better. The build quality is better. The image quality is just pristine here. This is in stopping up and down. This is what you would expect out of a modern high-end prime. And I really, really do like this lens. So if you can get these cheap, this is probably my number one recommendation for a 1.4 that can be used on different, well, this is EF, so you use this on a ton of different bodies, on crop, full frame. It's really an excellent lens. And we'll finally go to something I won't cover in multiple images, but this is the Nikon PreAi 24mm 2.8. So it's not quite as creamy as the Rokinon, but it doesn't open up as much. It does not have that flare coating like all the rest do, so it has a very nice vintage flare. And I'm assuming this lens is from the early 70s, being PreAi. I don't exactly know, but it's old. But still, being that old, you can see and not see how much lenses have changed in 50 years. It's well controlled. I really like the flaring on this. That's why I put the light on, for just so that you can see the differences in multi-coating here and how it changes contrast rendering. I like how it falls out of focus. It is slightly wider than 24 maybe. That's different. It's a little different angle than the rest, but if you really look at this image, it's pretty amazing how old this lens is and how good it actually still looks. So I don't know. Give me your thoughts below. All of these were shot wide open for each lens and all the same camera settings. So I'm adjusting the brightness in between to match brightness, because I shot them all what each lens could do wide open. Now in our side-by-side comparison, you can see the differences here between the very cheap utility lens that the Sigma 15-35 is, and compare that to a Cine still lens, or at least a Cine converted still lens, which I'd consider the Rokinon, and the Tamron. The Tamron here has the most controlled flare. Maybe that isn't something you're looking for. The Rokinon actually has a nice vintage look that typically a Cine Prime you would expect from that, because you don't necessarily want the sharpest image on a camera that doesn't have an OLPF like the S1 or the S5. That's going to be a different story on the S1H or other cameras. Depending on your camera, you might want a softer lens to avoid moire. So that's one of the nice things about having options, is that you can shoot shorter or you can shoot softer and keep within the set that you have according to the image that you're looking for. Lenses. So I put the prime right and the two zooms on the other side. Honestly, I got a little confused at first putting these all together because they're so similar. The The Prime has a little different color rendering, but the zooms are exactly pretty much the same. So the one difference, there's a little bit of geometry stretching in the 18 to 35, at least in full frame mode, which is a little bit different. The 24 or 105 is a little bit more correct there, but these will easily all match, and you can make them all intercut, which is a great thing again about the art lenses, is that they're all super similar in their coatings. You can see the way they handle flare is all very similar. The Prime's a little bit better, but again, not enough that it's the really only benefit of the Prime is better low light handling, and if you wanted to blow out the background into a blur more, definitely easier on the Prime. But all three, the 18 have workarounds, making that full frame mode, especially on an L mount lens because of the controls Panasonic puts in. But all three of these are great options.